What's up, everybody? My name is Patrick Jones, and I'm the host of this podcast, the Patrick Jones Baseball Podcast. I'm also a hitting coach here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Work with baseball and softball hitters, and lastly, I help high school baseball players get recruited to play in college. So I'm very involved within the baseball and softball world. And one of my good longtime buddies who actually I used to play baseball with back in the day is Marcus Davis, and he is the guest on today's show. Marcus played, collegiately at Florida State University, but he also played at the JUCO level at Walters State. So he has some great insight into, what it's like to play junior college baseball, what it's like to play at, the highest level of college baseball as well at Florida State when, back when they were really good. And I believe we're one game away from going to the College World Series. And then he played professionally too. So he has a lot of great insight into the development, but also just what experience, like what is it actually like to go play at a JUCO, what's it like to go play at a Power 5 school, what's it like to coach summer baseball team. And he's the head coach for the Midland Braves baseball team, which is Midland is a nationally known organization and highly respected. And he shares some insight into what he's learned so far in his coaching career, coaching travel baseball. So hope you enjoy this one. If you've enjoyed the podcast, if you've gotten value out of the podcast, please hit the subscribe button below, and please just share it with one person. This show is going to continue to grow by word of mouth more than anything else. And so if you find value in the show, like, please share it with somebody. That's the best way we can help grow the game and impact more players. So appreciate you doing that, and appreciate Marcus for coming on. Marcus is a great hitting coach too here in Cincinnati, Ohio, works with a lot of really good hitters in the private sector. So I appreciate him doing it. And here we go. So here's my episode with Marcus Davis. All right, we are now live. Marcus Davis, head coach, Midland Braves. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So you've been doing summer baseball now for a couple years with Midland, which is nationally known. I know you played for Midland growing up. We'll eventually get into that, but so far, like, what's been your experience, coaching really travel baseball the last couple years?
It's been interesting. It's interesting because the kids, I think, are a lot better than what we were, when we were going through it. And it's interesting also being on the other side of it, because now I know what a college coach is saying, what a pro scout thinks about a player and thinks about talent evaluation and stuff like that. So it's been interesting just trying to kind of convey the proper message without either tearing the kid down too much or building them up too much. Just I'm learning at the same time that they are, and trying to put them in a good position, for their present and their future.
What are you looking for? I know, travel baseball it's expanded like crazy, but what are you looking for when it comes to just players on your team? Like, obviously you can't take everybody. Like, what type of players are you looking for?
We don't shy away necessarily from the talent aspect of it. Like, we have tryouts, we look for guys, all that stuff. But it's really, the question that you try to get answered as soon as possible is like, how serious are you? Because it is one thing to just kind of show up and do the tournaments and all that stuff, and there's a place for it. But I think that one of the things that Midland's always kind of been really good at is trying to develop you, trying to get you to feel what a day's worth of practice is actually like, and then play a game after it in some cases. Or, seeing an arm that you've never seen, like, it's going to be a rough day, right? And just those things that, will translate further for you down the road. It's just giving you that, like, initial nudge, like, hey, if you want to do this, this is what it's actually like.
One of the reasons that I thought it would be really cool to get you on the podcast is, growing up, we're the same age, graduated high school, same year, 2010, and you were like a big prospect, big time prospect, had a ton of offers. And the reason why I say that before I kind of ask the question is because these days it seems that there's probably way more kids feeling that they're a top prospect when they're not actually, but because of how early a lot of the recruiting is and social media and stuff like that. And so I guess what I'm asking is how did you handle the hype?
It was a lot easier than I think the kids have to deal with now. We had MySpace in middle school and Facebook in high school. That's about it. But I think, there just wasn't that much attention on it. I'm sure you did the same, but, we put the bat down and played another sport. And just really between having time away from it and then also being able to just be around better players, right? Like, I think Midland was really good because the first day I showed up, there's, 4 or 5 outfielders, including me, and I'm like, there's 3 spots. Like, how does this work, right? So even with, some of the success I had in high school and all that stuff, it was still humbling to be on the field with some guys end up in the big leagues, some guys that play in the SEC, and I think that was what kept me grounded, and my dad wasn't gonna let that happen any other way, either way. So
do you see that though with other kids nowadays where they get some attention and then they maybe get a little bit complacent? They stop working because they maybe get an offer really early on from big schools, or they get hyped up, and then the parents start believing the hype too, and it's kind of like they now expect the red carpet.
Yeah, I think what happens is they get exposed to some of the downsides to travel baseball, in my opinion. So if we have a kid, just a hypothetical, we have a kid around here that gets a couple of offers when he's young, it becomes about, hey, this national team wants you to play and travel around and play with them, and this team wants you to, and it's free, and we take care of everything. And I've always kind of thought like it should be the opposite. So I was joking with one of my buddies. I don't have a son yet, but if I do, if he's good enough to commit early, I think I would take him out of travel ball, right? I think that unless there was a situation where I knew he was getting developed, right? And I think if, player A gets an offer to a Power 5 school when he's in 8th grade, he needs to get in the cage. He needs to get in the weight room, whatever pitchers work on. I don't know any of that stuff. But, like, just how can you set yourself up to when you walk in the door, one, you proved that the coaches that recruited you were right, but most importantly, it's like none of us went to college, like, to sit for 2 years and then get a taste for 1 year and then start for 1 year. It's like, how do I get in the lineup immediately? So the kids that lock their spots up sooner should probably travel less, right? And the ones who think they are worthy of playing, college baseball in any capacity should probably travel more, right? And not more at the expense of development, more as in like I'm, getting 2 or 3 solid practices in a week. I'm taking care of my body. I'm still working out. And then on Thursday morning, we can drive to, the places Atlanta for travel ball, but drive to, a Florida trip, South Carolina, Kentucky, wherever it is. And then you can show something that could get you that offer or, a visit or whatever the case may be.
That's good advice, man. I've never thought of it that way, but it makes complete sense. Like, why do you need to be traveling all over the country if you're already really good and getting offers at a young age? I mean, it doesn't
I
make
don't
any
know.
sense.
So I mean, if
I guess I'm sure their response, or maybe those teams' response, would be competition. They're
yeah.
trying to face the best competition. So, what would you say to if that's why they're doing it?
So I think that baseball's kind of blossomed to where you can get really good competition, 2-hour radius. So, I don't want to start anything naming names, but around here, there's probably between here, Indiana, Kentucky, there's 7, 8 organizations that I think you get a good game, whether it's their 16-year-old team, 17-year-old team, 18-year-old team. So if we spent that time, getting better, then it's, let's say, hey, this week I want every count you're going to start behind. And we're just going to work on at-bats behind in the count, right? So if we're controlling it, let's say, hey, when this kid comes up, it's 0-1. Like, now you have something that is going to benefit him while he's still having that competition. It's not just, here's our schedule, I hope we get a good arm that day. So there is, and that's better travel ball tournaments. So there are tournaments where that expectation raises, like you'll probably get more good games than bad. But you're leaving it up to chance at that point to where, you see it. How many kids are committed around here? Like if there was a way to just kind of keep everybody closer and, still keeping it competitive, I think there'd be more benefit for it.
That's interesting. How do you go about finding choosing the tournaments that you guys are going to play in?
So part of it is just name, but it's really word of mouth. We kind of have a little community of coaches. It's like, hey, I saw you went there last year. How was it? And like the big ones are, the big travel showcase. Like I said, Atlanta, like everybody's there, and it's just trying to keep it competitive, right? And then fit in for us, like when we have our round robins, there's plenty of schools there and trying to make sure that, they get good competition, they get exposure, and they get to sleep in their bed at night.
Are you guys able to practice during the summer?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work with the travel schedule and during the week? And because you hear of so many guys, so many players and teams where it's just tournaments, man.
Yeah. So we try to at least get one in. Say we are in the tournament from Thursday to Sunday. Probably try to practice either Monday or Tuesday. Address things that have gone on, and just try to keep them moving and in the habit of doing baseball when it's not just games. If we can't find games during the week, then we'll practice again. Because, you did it in college. I did it in college. You inter squad so much. Like, that's what practice is.
Yeah.
And if we can get a rep that doesn't involve, playing by the rules of the game, hey, let's do that one over. Like, we messed that one up. We're going to do the exact same thing. That's when they start learning. So we do a decent job of at least getting out there once. Sometimes it's twice, depending on if we find that other game. But we're fortunate with the organization having enough teams to where we just kind of reach out to each other.
Yeah, and you guys got good facilities and fields and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, you played at junior college, Walters State, and then you went on to Florida State. So you went from a junior college to, a Power 5 school, like one of the more nationally known in Florida State. What was the competition difference? Because you did very well at Florida State, so it wasn't like you went from like here to up here and then your production really dropped off. And so the reason I want to ask that is because you hear of kids, they don't want to go JUCO or D3 or whatever because competition.
Mm-hmm. So when I was at Walters, I'd say that like Friday night guys most of the time were, Division I bound. There's a couple guys that got drafted out of there. And then Saturday, depending on who or where we were playing, and then Sunday is, we got a little dicey depending on the team. But again, going back to the inter squad thing, if you are at a good junior college, like you'll get more from the inter squads than you do the games.
So your guys' pitching was really good, so you were able to develop that way.
So I think in the 2 years I was there, we probably had, 5 or 6 guys that went on to play Division I baseball, and then other ones that played at different levels. So I'd say that obviously, a Sunday guy in the ACC compared to a Sunday guy in junior college is probably a pretty wide gap. But I don't think that junior college deserves the rap it gets. I wish we'd come up with like a different name for it instead of like junior college. But there's just a lot of really good baseball players that need time to develop. They got to get their grades right. They haven't played enough baseball. They developed late, and this is the only option they got. And there's always going to be more baseball players than there are spots. So, I'm an advocate for junior college, but I try to tell kids it's like you're choosing baseball at that point, and there's nothing wrong with it because if you want to go to a four-year school and follow track academically, it's a little bit more difficult at junior college. Don't shy away from that. But
what do you mean by that?
So, example is if when I was at Florida State, the business school accepted kids after their sophomore spring or during their sophomore spring. So I went to school, right? So when I got to Florida State, they were like, you could get into business school, but you basically got to just kind of hang out for a year and take whatever courses. And I just wasn't interested in that. So chose a different route. But as far as the junior college part of it, if it's really about getting as far as you can, right, and you have to choose between, a mid-major, there's nothing wrong with that, or a Division II school that's a 4-year, or a junior college. It's like if you look at the Omaha roster, right, you look at these, Power 5, even it's trickling into mid-major a little bit. I mean, it's probably third of the roster, maybe a little less, but a good portion of their roster are junior college kids. So if you can buy yourself some time, like maybe you're not a Division I player now, but with a year of weights and fall practice and 55 games, and then a summer playing, Great Lakes like you coached or I coached in the Northwoods, you might be a D1 guy by then, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's some security in finding a 4-year school, but at the same time, there's not. I mean, you lived it. There's not a lot of security in baseball anyway.
No matter.
Past high school. So if it's about baseball, seeing how far you can get, then junior college probably should be on the table.
Speaking of not much security, I don't think that the average player or even parent out there really grasps that this for these college coaches, this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
So they're trying to win games. So if they don't think you can help them win games, they're not interested anymore. Your kid could be the nicest kid in the world. He could be trying to solve climate change for all that matters, right? Yeah. Or whatever. I don't want to get into that, but I mean, do you see that where it's like some people are just delusional into thinking that, well, everybody should want my kid? You got to take a step back and be like, that's awesome that you love your kid. I wish more people loved their kids as much as you love your kid, and I believe that. But these guys are trying to win games. That's how they feed their family.
Yeah. I think, parents and players, they don't know what they don't know. And if it's such a crass business. There's no easy way to say it without it. I mean, I know you felt that moment where you're like, wow, they don't want me no more.
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's like a punch to the gut. And it's not even that I want to, spend that much time trying to prepare them for when it happens. But like you said, if we took it out of baseball and you sat the parent down and you're like, hey, how you feed your kids is dependent on how these two interns do their jobs, right? You'd be watching them like a hawk. You'd be making sure they're productive, or you would find interns that are, right? So going back to there being more baseball players than there are spots, what you end up with is, on a random college baseball roster, if I have to choose between, let's say, two kids that both throw 95, right? And one of them has been through 2 years of junior college, right? And the other one is a freshman that's still trying to figure it all out. One of them has faced college hitters, and one of them has not. Then it's an easy choice, right? So when it comes to trying to figure out this whole recruiting deal, which is hard because it's literally different for every single person.
It's subjective, yeah.
But it's like, how do we lay out the facts, and then can you make the decision that is reasonable, is logical? Like I am, like you always hear, like, bet on yourself, right? I'm with it. But there's so much work that goes into betting on yourself. So like if you aren't somebody who can stare failure in the face, stare rejection in the face over and over again, then trying to get as high as you can is going to be difficult, because somebody's going to say, nah, we're good, right? Or I'm going to go with this guy. And when it really starts to kind of get at you is not necessarily when the older guys are the ones that are getting the innings or the at-bats. It's when the new, younger guys that come in get those at-bats and those innings because, they were going to be a draft guy and they ended up going to school, or this dude was at a bigger school and now he's coming to this one so he can play. And, like, there's just more that goes into it than just, like, your recruiting class and who's at the school already. And it's a lot. Like, it's just you're moving and shaking in a lot of different directions. And if you don't have help, right, somebody who's kind of gone through it, then it gets really difficult.
Well, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. How can you expect these parents and players to know what it's like?
Like, I don't blame. It's funny. The coaches I know, we kind of have conversations about some of the things that we've heard parents say, and I don't really blame the kids. I don't blame the parents because, I didn't know any of this stuff. Right? When I was 18, I didn't know any of this. But having been on the other side of it, the only thing that, frustrates me, if anything, is if you build up trust with somebody and then you start telling them, hey, this is what's going on, and then they go, I don't want to hear that. Because then it's like, hey, I tried. And, if a relationship sours because of it, then that's what it has to be. But you're trying to set these kids up to have an enjoyable college experience. Like, that is probably at the ethos of why I still do this. It's like, try to get as much as you can out of baseball, have an enjoyable experience. Because, I played with guys at Florida State who were there for 4 years. They got 35 at-bats, and they don't like baseball anymore, right? Or like a pitcher that got 20 innings in 3 years. Like, sure, if you go to a big school and that school wins their conference tournament or Omaha, whatever, they get a ring, right? That ring only matters if the memories that you get from it, like, warm you up, right? So if you just got a ring and you weren't really a part of the team, that's cool.
Yeah.
Put it away and never think about it again, right? But if you get one and, the day you get it, your group chat's going crazy, or like, you know, you're reaching out to somebody you haven't talked to in forever, then it's something to it, right? Like, that's the cool part of it, and I don't think those two things kind of align. It's like the same way that, you know, you could win. I could have won an ACC championship. We didn't. Or, you
Close.
know,
I mean, you guys the regional, right, though, that year?
win the Supers that year.
Super
Yeah.
regional, yeah.
But if, you know, if somebody's at a D3 school and they do get a ring, like, they matter the same to the individual.
Right, because you were part of the team. You had
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, enjoyable for me, if I had to go back, is playing, right, and having teammates that I can call, or, you know, if I'm in a city, I can reach out. Hey, want to go grab dinner? Or, you know, the ones that keep playing, you're like, hey, are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's grab dinner after. Like, that's the stuff that I don't think the teenager thinks about. That's probably what most of us are going to get out of this.
Yeah.
Anyway, is more relationships than, like, you know, financial gain
And experience and I'm so glad you brought that up. It's funny that you brought that up, because what comes to my mind, and the listeners of the podcast will definitely remember, you know, I sometimes reference this, is, you know, I played in the Pecos League, which is literally the lowest level of probably any type of baseball, really. And we won the championship that year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is very Pecos League. They didn't send me one ring. They sent me 2 rings on accident, which is so Pecos League. But I have both of those rings. And to your point, is like, I was on the team, you know, I got at bats. I felt a part of that, you know. And so I had Shane Sharkey on the podcast not that long ago. He was coaching junior college baseball at Brookhaven College in Texas, and he was on that championship team. So I'm so glad you brought up that point of that feeling of like, I'm a part of something that's bigger than me, and like I matter, versus the guy getting 10 at bats over 4 years. And yeah, they played at Florida State, but now they want nothing to do with baseball. They hate it.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, like, we don't get, like, do you get team atmosphere anywhere else? Like, even, you know, me coaching, it's not nearly the same as when you're playing. So
I miss it, yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's just like to have, you know, 30 other guys, and you guys are trying to solve this problem together. Like, whatever it is, right? At whatever level, it's just like, you know, we got our coaches and we got that dynamic, and then, you know, dealing with the strength coach, everything else that goes with it. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's, you know, 7:10, 6:40, whatever time. Here's the lineup. Here's who's hot. We're going to try to figure this out today. You don't get that. Like, I haven't found it anywhere since I've stopped playing. I don't think I will find it. But it's just like, of all the things I miss, it's not, you know, like, it is games to some extent, but it's really just like sitting in the locker room at 11 a.m. waiting for 1 p.m. practice, and playing cards. Mm-hmm. Being on the bus and, you know, watching a dumb movie. Like, stuff like that is, whenever I think about baseball, those are the things that come up. It's not like, you know, how good I looked in my Florida
cool
State
gear you got.
Yeah, like all that stuff.
Yeah. So my next question for you is, and this is kind of a little bit what we've been talking about, you went from JUCO to Florida State, like we had mentioned before, and we had just talked about how it's not the same experience if you have 20 at-bats over 4 years, even if you're at a big school. So why did you decide to go to a Power 5 school, Florida State, one of the best in the country over the past 20 years or whatever it is, over a place where you knew you would be the dude right away?
Betting on myself.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it wasn't necessarily, that I thought that I was, above some of the mid-majors that reached out after junior college or anything like that. It was just, I wanted to try to get to the big leagues. So if that meant failing somewhere, I wanted it to be the highest level first. And then, if I went there and if I didn't make the starting lineup, or I played but didn't perform well, I'm not gonna play pro ball anyway. So and again, a little different then compared to now because social, all it's easier
And
to
you
be
were
found.
you already had performed at junior college, which is good baseball. It wasn't
Yeah.
like you went from high school. So if you went, let's just say you have a player who you think is not ready for a Power Five, like they're not, but they got a couple offers.
Mm-hmm.
Does your mind go? I think he might be that guy who gets 20 at bats over 4 years.
So I think that one of the things that has kind of helped me with this transition is not making the prediction. Um, so when somebody tells me they're going there, it's like I just judge your work. That'll tell you. Like, and sometimes people's work habits change as they get older. Like that part is true, but I'm sure you've seen it dealing with some of the guys you dealt with, where it's like that dude's really talented, and if everything goes well, he's gonna play 3 years and have a great time. But if there's some adversity, then you just walk away. Like you see it on both sides. So I don't think anybody has the crystal ball when it comes to like how are they going to end up. It's just like I know, 6 a.m. lifts and 95 mile an hour left-handed relievers and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So it takes, you got to be a little crazy to hit, or even on the mound. Like I think, like I said, if you work and you got the habits, try to get as far as you can. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be the one that, played scared, for lack of a better phrase, and like, man, I probably could have went to this school instead, but I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. But if you are somebody who's not interested in, the hard stuff, the inevitable looking in the mirror at like 2 a.m., like, do I want to do this?
Yeah.
All right, the first 28B slump, whatever. Then maybe it's like, how do I just make sure I have that enjoyable experience, take anything too serious, get the degree I want, all that stuff.
What about if you have a player who he has maybe, and maybe this is a little bit different now because of the transfer portal and things like that, but he has like some mid-major offers, Division I offers, but man, he wants to he wants to bet on himself. He wants to play in the big league, so he wants to play the highest level of college baseball. Mm-hmm. So what if his thing is, you know what, I think I might go JUCO for a year and then try to transfer, but he already has Division I offers.
It's a bold move.
Yeah.
But
I almost made that move.
I know, and it's hard, isn't it? Like it's something that I don't think is for everybody, and it's just because of how uncertain it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Get hurt.
Anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, life happens, and no idea what could change. But again, previous talk. If I believe in your work habits, then I'm gonna say go to junior college. You figure it out, right? And it might not be in the first year, it might be in the second, but it's still 2 years at whatever school you want if everything goes right. And even though you aren't at the university for 4 years, you're in the baseball program for 2 years. There are guys that are at those schools now that really aren't, like, they got the uniform and they do all the practicing, but when it comes down to am I going to throw this guy in the game, they don't.
Yeah.
So not till they get older. So if somebody were to approach me like, hey, I have this, I want that, I want to go to junior college, well, the first thing would be like with the portal, it's obviously its own issue, but do you think that you could put numbers up at one of these 4 years and then leave if that's your prerogative? If the answer is yes, then then junior college it's not either or, right? And then you still leave the option of going to junior college after your first year or whatever if you want to do that. So the transfer portal has changed it a little bit, but I think it all will just boil back down to, like, do you believe that, like, your work habits and your ability to to work through some adversity is going to work in your favor or not.
Yeah, and I like what you had said earlier too about how it's very subjective, right? This whole recruiting thing, because it's based on each individual player, what their goals are, or what they want to study, or where they're at right now. Are they a corner guy? Are they up the middle? Are they pitcher? I mean, there's so many different elements to it. And I think for a lot of them, you got to be patient and just keep working, And I think, not to name names, we just saw a kid, around here who is a senior and just committed to a D1 school, right? And so it's spring, it's almost May of his senior year in 2022, which it seems that you don't hear this very often. He just committed to a Division I program. So if you love it, continue to do it.
Yeah. It's just that's where the social part kind of gets guys in troubles, because you see this instant. For some kids, it's instant, right? Like the time where they're allowed to receive offers, that period opens up. They get 5 offers. They decide on their school. They move on, right? So if you see that and you're not one of those kids, you think, well, how do I fix it quick so that they call my name? Which is, again, teenage brain. That's how it works. And you feel like you're running out of time. But, and again, baseball is so long. Like 140 games in the minor league season, 160 games in the big league season. College baseball, even though they don't play every day, it's 16 weekends or something like that? Yeah. Something like, it's a long time.
Yeah.
So you have to really just devote yourself to working while it's silent to really get what you get at, what you want out of it. So when you have examples like the one you said, it's not surprising because you kind of see it happening. Mm-hmm. Right? Because
they keep working.
Yeah. There's not a coach on planet Earth right now, baseball coach, that will look at a good player and be like, we're good. Mm-hmm. And not just be like, well, what if I talk to compliance about his grades, and then what if, whatever strings they can pull to try to get that dude on campus.
Or, and this is, I hate to say it, I've seen this before too, they drop somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sad part of it, but business, right? So if you can work and understand that it's worth it, whether, you end up you get that call for a Division I school late, or you got to go to a different school and maybe work your way back up into Division I, or however it works. In the end, the work has to be rewarding, and then if you're patient with it, you'll get the result you're looking for more times than not.
I want to transition now, because you're obviously a hitting coach too. You work with a lot of hitters in the private sector. How do you go about helping your own guys? Maybe we'll just start out on your team in a team setting right now.
So right now I don't have them. They're all doing their high school deal. As far as when the summer starts for travel ball, it's really how do we get you as competitive as we can, as fast as we can, right? Because, again, you have a lot of kids who have some ability, but, maybe they haven't had the resources that some other kids have, or they grew 3 inches last year, or they put some weight on, or they, started caring a little bit more about baseball, whatever. So when we're in season, it's not – we don't want to just feel like we're throwing them to the wolves and hopefully some school sees some random occurrence and then we can go from there. It's like, hey, this is, one of the things that we're going to try to do and we try to tier them a little bit, the guys that project to be big bats, the guys that are, speedsters, XYZ. But it's like, can we set you up to where – we're playing a good team, and I know ahead of time that there's 5 or 6 schools that are going to be there, and put you in a position to where at a minimum, like at the end of the day, I'm talking to one of them after, they go, hey, tell me about that kid. So it's like we have to give them something to sell first. So that sell is always going to be like in-game production. Like I have not had a conversation with a college coach that has been, hey, what's his X velocity? Okay, good. Like it's always something else. Yeah. Like can he do it in game? Can he, like, how is he in the field? All of that other stuff. So we spend a good amount of time on the hitting side, just trying to make small adjustments because we don't have the time to get in, tear it down, and build it back up. That's kind of what the fall, winter's for. But something small here or there if we see it. A lot of approach stuff. So then when they get those opportunities, they can kind of do something with them.
So what about in the fall and in the winter? Again, I know you work with not just the guys on your own team, but a lot of other players too, at college guys, high school players. How's that process go for you? Is there a system you have when it comes to working with guys, or?
So around, they play so long now, like around November, December is when the high school guys start inching back in. And we take some time to kind of assess where they are physically, from a mobility standpoint, but just like, setting up a launch monitor, seeing what they hit and all that good stuff. But in the off season, I just have always kind of been a big believer of, like, if we can change one thing physically and one thing mentally, then you will see a gain that is as good or better than us sitting with some bat speed trainers and just seeing, can we raise your exit velocity? Now, I'm not saying there's no benefit to that. I think there are a lot of kids who need it. But for the kind of kids that I've been fortunate enough to work with on the high school level, the majority of them have enough bat speed, right? And it's like, well, how do we take what you do well, right, and either keep it the same, make it a little bit better, but here's these issues that I see in game or when we crank the machine up. What if we just fix those? So there is some science to it. Like, we, try to get them to move better and some corrective exercises if they need it. But for the most part, with high school, with the guys that I'm fortunate to have, it's like you are a small adjustment away from having a lot more success than what you're used to.
Yeah, because at some point you have enough. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, of course you could always get stronger. Like, I get that. Not everyone's John Carlos Stanton, but if you're hitting baseballs over 100 miles an hour, probably don't need to set aside just an hour focus solely on bat speed training, right? I think you could find a lot more productive things to do when to become a better hitter than just try to get 103 or 104. You know what I mean? And I think you playing professional baseball, that's where that experience really helps.
And I think that the issue that a lot of kids run into because of what they see on the internet is just that it's either or, right? And it's like, it's never been like that. Like, I played with guys who needed to hit the ball harder, like, absolutely. But when they tried to, it was just a strikeout fest, right? So, like, we didn't have all this information, so it's like, how do we do it in that setting? But what I don't want is for you to spend so much time trying to reach a number, right? So you trick a school, and then you show up and you can't do anything. So the first thing is, how do we hit the ball hard? And then how do we make it consistent? I don't think it's like some profound statement, right. But like I do a lot of preaching, like, your average exit velocity off of this machine, off of these breaking balls, when you go backside, as opposed to it just being, we're going to run it up this way, and then, or the flip side, the guys that don't like to use it, like I don't, just be in the middle. Just use the old way we did it, and also use the new stuff. The new stuff's pretty cool too.
Yeah. One of the things that I have tested in here is, I have a lot of, some Major League Baseballs, and then I have just some regular balls over time. And I've had players, kind of go back and forth, and on the hit tracks I have in here, literally 7 to 8 miles an hour difference between Major League Baseballs and so when I'm saying this, and maybe I'll get some flack for this or whatever from people, is, and I saw this in my year in professional baseball too, with the baseballs that they use, is what you see on TV is guys hitting baseballs 110, even if they're 115. This is just my theory on it, and what I've seen and what I've done in my cage with the regular high school baseballs and then professional Major League Baseballs, is you can take about 7 or 8 miles an hour off of some of those balls, home runs that are being hit at the Major League level. So going back to what we're talking about is, if you can hit a baseball 100 miles an hour with just some regular high school baseballs, that's kind of equivalent to like 107, 108 if you put in some new baseballs in there. From what I've seen, and again, maybe it's a small sample size, but I have Major League Baseballs and I have regular baseballs, and I've now tested. There's a reason why a lot of these facilities, when they do like exit velocity testing, they will start bringing in new baseballs, or they're bringing in, like Major League Baseballs, and the ball just flies. Yeah. And so I think there's you got to be careful of comparing yourself to some of these guys. And of course you want to be better and push yourself too. But if you were all using some of those baseballs, your numbers would be higher.
That's interesting.
I'll probably get an email from MiLB about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. You get to deal with that, not me. I really like it. I remember how hard those baseballs were. Like when I was playing, I don't know. They've changed them 3-4 times now. But the thing that I always kind of go back to whenever we are discussing exit velocity with a kid, or it's like those dudes, I can assure you, are not moving nearly as fast as they could. Like as far as like
overswinging and
yeah. So, and the other thing, it's like if you got the chance, like if you ever get in a room with some of these, you'll understand it, right? Like one, they're grown men, like you're 16, 17, 18 years old, and two, they are the biggest grown men. It's like I've been joking, the Yankees are like a football team, man. Like pitchers, position players, they're just a big team. So when you see, we talked about Stanton, right? You see him, I mean, what, 6'6", like no body fat, just a massive human being. Like, I don't think that you trying to build your game up to be his is going to reap the same reward, right? And if you look at the flip side of it, and not to say that these dudes aren't strong, but the smaller guys that still hit homers, like that is more of what I want these kids to see and to try to emulate, because those dudes can hit the ball hard, right? But they know that the quality of their contact is more important than, trying to run that number up. So there's, like I said, every situation is a little different. But whatever ball it is, for me, if you can hit it 95, then we can move on.
Yep.
Like, as long as it's off of a pitch, not like a tee or a soft toss. If you can hit a ball 95 with some sort of velocity, then we can move on. Like, and I don't shy away from it. If somebody comes in and like, hey, I need to hit the ball harder, like, and they hit it hard, then we say, well, why do you feel like that? And 9 times out of 10, it comes down to something that has nothing to do with them actually swinging the bat faster.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's like you're trying to pull these kids in different directions, and it's they see one thing, but they don't understand like the underlying reasons behind it. So then they just go full speed at that thing, and it doesn't get them the results that they thought it would.
Yeah, that's great, man. I tell you what, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I knew you've had experience as a player, coach, travel baseball, hitting coach in the private side, and you understand that what's really important in hitting, right?
Yeah.
What's really important in helping kids, and I think you do a really good job as a hitting coach working with guys. I've seen you work with guys in the cage. So I guess what I'm gonna say is, how can, and I know it's kids are playing this time of year, but even so, right? I think if there's one thing you should take away from this, it's not always about the volume, right? It's not always about trying to hit the ball harder and doing a lot of work in the cage. A lot of times it's about just having good conversations with the coach and getting him so you have that right approach. So what's the best way for someone to contact you if they want to hit with you or, try out for your team? Or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just on my Twitter, it's fine. It's @_the_hitting_MD. That's pretty much the easiest way to get at some information. I'm on that app too much as it is.
Me too, yeah.
But another thing that I'll just kind of say for anybody who is struggling at the plate, it's weird. Like whether they're a college guy that I've had or a pro guy that comes in or a 9-year-old. I literally ask them, like, as far as the cookie cutter goes, this is the only thing that I feel like I cookie cut. It's like, do you see the ball well, and can you get your swing off easily? And you'd be shocked at, like, how many times people will tell you, like, when I get my foot down, it feels like I have to exert so much energy to swing a baseball bat. And it's like, if you can't see it and you can't, at some point that machine or that arm is going to move too fast. So if you don't have the access or the resource, start with that. Like, how can I see the ball easier? How can I get my swing off easier? And see what that does to your plate discipline. See what it does to your approach. And see if that's what causes you to hit the ball harder, right? So then if we find that number, maybe it shoots up, maybe it doesn't. But at least we know this is what you have to do to be competitive in this at-bat, to be competitive in this situation. Then we could try to build on it from there. So if I have, an extended period of time, or you do, and you have the resources, then you can go get the bat speed stuff. But at least you have a foundation. It's not just, I've been gripping and ripping since I was 9, and I'm going to keep doing it. It's like, okay, well, eventually somebody's going to throw too hard, and then you'll be done playing baseball.
Right, yeah. You'll get in your own head, and then
it'll be over.
Right.
Breaking ball's too good, and
yep.
That's what it is.
Man, this has been awesome. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's always fun to talk with you, talk hitting, talk baseball with you. And I know you're busy. You've already been hitting with the kid this morning and driving everywhere. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.